I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
Looks like today we're going to be talking about the Fight King. Now, he's incredibly interesting to me because even though he only shows up in a single episode, there are so many details within this episode that there's still so much to go over and so many things to talk about referring to his character. Starting off strong, we have the fact that he is an actual undead. You see, the Fight King put his own soul within his sword in order to obtain a kind of crooked pseudo-immortality. Now, the reason I say pseudo-immortality is due to the fact that simply because he doesn't die of old age doesn't mean he's clearly suffering from time. His body is crippled in almost every conceivable way. He is missing an entire arm as well as a damaged eye. Not only that, but his skin is entirely black due to necrosis. He has scars and stitches all over his body, clearly showing that he has suffered multiple fatal wounds against various adversaries. Now, considering his very sword possesses the words "to fight is to live," I'm going to assume that he became immortal simply to continuously enjoy the prospect of battle, as it's very obvious that in life this man absolutely loved battle. He clearly was incredibly adept considering he possesses multiple weapons including daggers, a crossbow, and his large sword itself. On top of all these crippling factors, it also seems as though his very bones are also messed up, as every single time he moves you can hear them cracking and breaking as well as just popping constantly whenever he moves any kind of muscle. In fact, by the time we meet him, he completely lacks the ability to stand, walk, or even really do anything that doesn't involve simply talking or moving his arm. And even then, it has shown some level of strain. Basically, this guy's body is on the breaking point, and the only thing that's keeping it together is the magic that has allowed him to live this long in the first place, but even that seems to be somewhat failing his body. Basically meaning even if he never dies of old age, his body may become so terrible that he will eventually be unable to do even the smallest task with it. Moving on from the Fight King's design, let's go ahead and talk about the setting, and oh my god, this place is horrifying. So here's the thing, the entire arena is entirely made up and supported by the magic that keeps the Fight King alive. Because of this, he has complete control over the entire arena, is able to even create barriers, manipulate the ground, as well as even control the walls, and this ultimately leads him to have full reign there. Now, the reason why this is so terrifying is due to the fact that if anyone actually were to walk past the Fight King's barrier and decide to come in, they will be trapped immediately. And upon being trapped, he will attempt to get them to battle his own ghost warriors as well as their own comrades. All of this for them to quote-unquote earn their freedom. However, this is a lie. The Fight King does not actually release those who win in this combat. You see, we know this simply due to the fact that the ghosts are in a continuous state of horror from what they had done, and we know that they were the ones who won because they killed their comrades last, as we saw with Finn and Jake. Now here's the thing, this actually brings up a rather interesting question of what happens to those who do not win the tournament. You see in the crypt below where all the corpses are kept, one thing that is actually rather interesting is that the number of heads and corpses is higher than the amount of ghost gladiators. The full number of ghost gladiators ranges between 8 to 10, with 2 additional ones being seen after the arena is destroyed. However, when you look into the crypt, the number of corpses outnumbers the amount of gladiators, which opens up a very interesting question of who was created into a gladiator and who wasn't. Now personally, I believe this was more of a mistake that was done in the background, but it's also quite possible that only the strongest of the fighters were made into gladiators, with them being basically the last 2 who survived. Now this really brings up the treachery of the Fight King himself, considering that not only did he have no intention of freeing these individuals, but would actively torment them afterwards. You see, you're supposed to be granted freedom after killing the last guardian ghost and then killing your comrade. However, we've already debunked this, as you are never given freedom. So basically what happens is you are killed after you kill the final participants, which also brings up the very twisted way these individuals probably died, because you have to factor in, at this point they're stronger than pretty much every other contestant. It's quite possible that after they defeated all of the various other contestants that won, the Fight King probably kept summoning the ghosts until they were eventually overpowered and killed, but a much more likely way is the next way, which was starving them to death. You see in the crypt below, you actually see various corpses that are entirely intact, with not seeming to have any fatal wounds. So taking that into consideration, it's quite possible that he just put them down there until they died of dehydration. There's also them probably taking themselves out simply due to the fact that they just killed their best friend, even though they weren't even granted freedom after doing so. And to make this even darker, the ghosts seem entirely unaware of their surroundings and are a continuous state of feeling sorry for themselves and pleading for forgiveness from those they killed. They are specifically pleading to the lovers that they ended up having to murder, believing that it was the only way to set themselves free, and the fact that the Fight King betrayed this notion must have put them into full despair. So we've covered the Fight King's appearance, we've talked about how he's immortal, we've talked about the Guardian Ghost, we've talked about the horrible fate of anyone who walks in here. What is there else to talk about? All that's really left to talk about is honestly just the ending of the entire episode and the end of the Fight King by proxy. You see, after Finn managed to destroy the sword, every single spirit within the arena was set free. However, one thing that was particularly interesting is that we get to see the Fight King's soul go up to the heavens along with the entire arena. Now, this actively shows that the entire arena was in fact bound to the Fight King, as I mentioned previously, but the fact that it immediately began levitating along with the Fight King means that the entire arena was quite possibly a construct of the soul itself. So, incredibly powerful warrior becomes immortal, gets crippled after fighting in countless battles, ends up enslaving multiple souls, and so on for basically centuries, and that is the Fight King summarized. Sure, I can talk about how the Gladiators are each named after actual gladiators within real life and legends. I can talk about how all of the couples actually were homosexual relationships. I can talk about a buttload of extra stuff, but at this point it would just become redundant. So with that being said, that's all I got for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and if you really have a good idea for a video, be sure to go down to the comments below. And a shout out to all my Patreon supporters over there on the Patreon, even though I just said Patreon, whatever. We got Daniel Terp going to La La Land, along with Scribe of Scrolls, who technically recently changed their name, but I'm gonna try to pronounce it. I hope to God I don't mess it up. The Mnemonic Sailor, I'm sorry, Christopher Alvear, and then Jakaya Pitbinger. Holy Jesus, and along with Jay. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Anyway, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot, and if you want to support the channel, whoever is watching this, I'm going to assume that your name is Joshua for some reason. The Patreon link is down in the description below. If you decide to join, you get tons of perks for every single tier, with you basically starting out with Discord benefits along with early videos, as well as even audios for the upper tiers, and you end up appearing in the credits as shown here. With that being said, I won't keep you, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye!